Hey, everybody, welcome to Reigniting Small Business, the podcast from Spark Business Institute. I'm Laura Richards, and I'm here today with Patrick Lee, CEO of SBI, and we're going to discuss all things small business grants. How you doing, Patrick?
I am doing good. Hello, Laura.
Well, get us started here. What's a grant?
Well, grants are basically funds being allocated from one organization to another for a specific purpose. And the nice thing about a grant is, unlike a loan, typically grants don't get paid back. Now, there are some grants where if you don't meet certain requirements, they have to be paid back. But generally, a grant's intention is to give you the money to accomplish an objective.
Absolutely. So there are a number of grants out there. There's federal government grants, and we're going to talk about some of those, state and local agencies that offer grants, in addition to private organizations that are another bucket of grants we can do. So talk to us a little bit, Patrick, about what we're seeing with the COVID-19 grants that are out there.
Well, this is, of course, the hot topic because there are a lot of grants and there are a lot of loans that can become grants if used properly, being administered. Obviously, the most common one that everyone's talking about is the PPP grant, which it's actually PPP loan, which can be converted to a grant if you use the funds for certain specific things, mostly payroll. It's payroll protection program. So if you're using it for payroll and for certain other approved expenses, it will be converted from a loan to a grant. Now, even if that doesn't happen, the terms of the PPP are generally pretty good. So folks are taking advantage of what is essentially, in quotes, cheap money, right? But there's also a whole host of other things. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL program, which features both grants and loans. And both the PPP and the EIDL are being administered by the Small Business Administration, the SBA. So they're almost a one-stop shop for some of the bigger programs that are being put out there by the federal government right now. You can get grants up to $10,000 through EIDL. If you're in a particular low-income area that's being targeted by the SBA for this right now, they're trying to boost areas that were already marginal economically and are now being hit disproportionate, if you can even say disproportionate in this times, but being hit disproportionately. And they're usually the EIDL is looking for an economic impact of somewhere between 25 and 30% impact on that business in order to qualify for that money. Couple of things to note. Right now, there's a lot of refunding going on in programs that you may have applied into back in 2020, and you may have either gotten something or not. And so you may think, well, that doesn't apply to me. Right now, there are folks who are getting a second installment of something that they have already gotten in 2020, whether that's the PPP or an EIDL. So you should be looking into it. And if you didn't get one in 2020, it doesn't preclude you from getting one now. So starting points to figure this out. First, the SBA is using the banking infrastructure out there, the banking world, to administer these because that gives them so much more reach, so many more people involved. So just contact your bank or a bank to see what the requirements are and how you can get involved in this. Also, obviously, you can contact the SBA directly, and they will either allow you to apply through them or they will tell you what you need to do to go through a third party in order to apply.
Thanks. That's all good info. It sounds like alphabet soup, though. At one point, the PPP and the EIDL and go to the SBA and,
Well, it's a government-run program, so it has to have a lot of ununderstandable alphabet in there.
Yes.
But I think the first time through on this was extremely confusing, and there was a lot of people weighing in, trying to help and all. This time through it's still complicated, but it's a lot smoother. I wouldn't be scared of the process. I would just get in there and see what you can find.
Jump in. A few more that are available through the federal government. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant is new, $15 billion for live venues This could include motion pictures, theaters, even some museums qualify. So if you are either a small venue, Patrick, I know you have a few clients on your roster that would be included in that, all the way up to Broadway. Those folks are going to see some relief with that.
And this was a big deal, by the way. One of the things hardest hit, we all heard about the restaurants and all that, but leisure activities in general were hard hit, especially ones where there's some sort of gathering. So we all know about the plight of the movie theaters and all, but I think sort of, I don't want to say lost in this, but there are a lot of small performing arts organizations and nonprofits in our communities, and they really do live from performance to performance, and ticket sales and donations at the door and pass the hat and a lot of things that sort of, I don't want to say fly under the radar, but it's a paycheck to paycheck existence there. And I think this is going to save a lot of those organizations. I think this is a good program, and hopefully it's administered well. I know for certain that some of these organizations I'm working with, they don't have a readily available way to go to a different revenue stream. If they're not selling tickets and if people aren't seeing a performance to give a donation, they're kind of out of luck. Now we'll talk a little bit about how some organizations were able to utilize grants to sort of get their way through in a little bit, but I think this is a great program. And if you have if you're performing or doing anything in this, you need to check and see if you qualify. The fine print will be important.
One of the things that occurred to me as you were just talking is even the children's theaters, half recreation, half, most of those types of operations get the majority of their funding through ticket sales. So.
And I think you need to not presuppose where you fit in this. It says shuttered venue. Okay, so if it is a venue of some sort in which there is a performance or something happening or occurring, you need to make sure, does this apply or not? There's $15 billion being handed out to these types of organizations. You very well may qualify.
And then there's the state and local COVID-19 grants. So these, Patrick, are more geographically specific, obviously, because they're local governments that are facilitating them. My recommendation would be to reach out to your local SCORE chapter to find out what they have going that you might qualify and how to apply.
Yeah, my only advice in these is there's a lot of these at the city level, the county level, economic development, locally level, state level, even some regional stuff. And the big issue here is they're usually underfunded for the number of people who show up in line. So when you see these things come live, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time perfecting you want to do a good application, but you probably don't want to spend a lot of time perfecting that application. Get in early or you may not get in at all. Excuse me.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think you said something really important there about the amount of time and effort that should go into a grant. And one of the things that I think is a little bit different is a lot of these COVID-19 situations, the application is almost like the application for a bank loan or something. It's not, as specifically tailored. When you're talking about some of these other private organization loans and even some of the government organizations as well, or agencies, they're looking for something specific. And so the content of the application itself is really important because these organizations aren't just giving away free money. If you come across somebody that's giving away free money, and there may be some scams like that out there online, so be careful and make sure that you're applying to a valid grant. But most grants require very thoughtful preparation, presentation, and follow through. So think about what is the organization you're applying to, trying to achieve, and how your story fits in with that, and the best way to tell your story to score that grant.
I think it's really important that you make sure there is a honest affiliation of what they're trying to accomplish and what you do. I think it's dangerous to just think free money. How do we make this look like we're doing that? That can take a lot of your time up applying to grants that you never had a chance of getting. And it also can take grant money out of the hands of somebody who's more deserving. And honestly, these organizations that are doing the grants, they're doing it to achieve objectives. So they're trying to do good work. And so you want to make sure that you do really meet that. But that being said, the amount of preparation that you do, like you said, the whole PPP, the EIDL, a lot of that is basically numbers. You're saying, here's some numbers, here's some very specific legal things you need to know, and do we qualify? A lot of these grants are much more, show us that what you're doing fits with what our mission is and why we're giving out these funds, and why should we award you over somebody else who's doing something similar. And so it's a competitive piece, and grant writing is an art. It's not just a function. You people who are good at writing grants are good at writing grants, and they succeed because of that. So this is almost one of those pieces where a little bit of knowledge here can really change your outcomes.
And I want to say too, the amount of the award is oftentimes based on your ability to show the need. So the better you can articulate the need, the more likely you're going to get a higher number, even if you're getting a number from that organization. Making sure you're maximizing what you could collect by writing a good application is key.
And I think one of the things that brings up too is we're so used to talking about grants in a nonprofit sort of way. People think about it that way. There are plenty of for-profit, private-based grants that have, the intentions of helping small business, helping a local community, whatever that might be. And so if you're a business owner and you're thinking, well, yeah, grants, I get that, but we're not in the business of that. I'll get my PPP and be done. You may be overlooking opportunity, depending on what your industry is, depending on what community you're in, depending on a lot of these things. There may be additional grant opportunities out there for you that by sort of not accepting this as a valid approach, you may be missing opportunity.
So that illustrates a good point. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the examples of private grants that we've collected. Some of these are COVID-19 relief related. BG&E, for example, has pledged $15 million to assist Maryland small businesses who can apply for this energizing small business grants up to $20,000. So that is directly related to COVID-19. GoFundMe also has a small business relief fund, and there are other corporate entities like FedEx has a small business grant contest, and veteran-owned businesses can apply for Street Shares Foundation's grant. Those are up to $5,000, and women-owned businesses can apply for the Amber Grant for female entrepreneurs, and that's up to $10,000 a month. So if you weren't all writing that down, that's okay. It's easy to search these grants for yourself, both online, but as I said, be careful. But there's also tools specifically designed for grant research. So one of those is grantwatch.com. That is a subscription service, but tons of grants, and you can check it out for free. You can go onto their website and check it out. If you want to use your local library, that's a terrific resource. They have the funding directory online, and they have librarians who can help you hone your search and find the grants that apply for you. So I think that's an excellent place to start. And these resources are probably also available online through the library if you can't get in there in person.
And I think one of the other ones I don't think you mentioned was the grants.gov URL, which just is almost a giant just listing of grant opportunities that are put out by the U.S. government. So researching this, looking for it, looking for where the opportunities are, that is something that there are people out there who are professional grant researchers. But in all seriousness, there is plenty to find, just as you said, by a basic Google search or beginning that process. And there are organizations that will help you. The library is one, but economic development frequently score. There are other folks who are willing to kind of guide you through this. And in some instances, this may be your best lifeline to getting beyond where we are now to a place where your business or your organization can become self-sufficient again.
So, Patrick, I would love to tell everybody a success story to end it on. And since we started out talking about the 15 billion for live venues, I think it would be great if you could tell a story that relates to folks who were lucky enough to position themselves not to be in that situation, to need that venue closure money.
Well, I'll take a good story because this particular organization was hit with a whole lot of stuff at once. And if you heard the story from the outside and said, predict the outcome, I don't think you'd think they would make it. Okay. So I was there. I was contacted by an organization. That organization, performing arts organization in Annapolis, they had been given a grant to have me come and assist them in a transition because they had to reorganize their entire entity. They had somebody who had been there for 17 plus years who was retiring. They were transitioning to a new person. They were redoing how they do everything. And so they wanted help in making that plan, enacting that plan, being successful in this transition. So I came in under a grant to help them with that. As we were processing through that, COVID hit. Now, this now is like a double whammy. You have this huge transition, all this stuff happening, and at the same time, you now can't perform. As we all saw, you're shut down. So this organization did both performances, they do teaching, and they're very dependent on ticket sales and tuition, plus live events to raise funds. So things are looking dire there. Well, in comes the PPP and some state arts grants, right? Which gets them through that piece. Then they are being extremely innovative because they're like, okay, we have to do something to keep going with the mission to make things happen. So they ended up getting both donations and some grant funding because of their innovativeness, right? Now we're into the second round of PPP plus the shuttered venue grants that they're likely to get. So they have fully transferred from pre-pandemic, things are going normal, to a transition of who's running the organization and what the organization looks like through COVID. And it looks like all of this is actually going to position them in a better place than when it all started. And I don't know that if you had told them all the things that were going to happen on this road, this transition, that they would say, oh, we'll be fine. I think most folks would think they wouldn't be. So this is not an irrelevant methodology to getting yourself through this, surviving through and positioning yourself to come out when things return to some form of normalcy.
That is a great thing to hear, Patrick. And I hope everybody that's listening to Reigniting Small Business today can kind of take something away from this. If it's not for your own business, then to refer a friend. There's lots of grants and opportunities out there. Get to your library, get with a mentor who can help you reach out and look for yourself. And let's take advantage of the money that's out there to help us.
Excellent.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next week on another edition of Reigniting Small Business.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.